When it comes to HBO's Game of Thrones, there are just so many brilliant episodes, like The Reigns of Castamere, The Battle of Blackwater, Hard Home, most of the episodes from the first 4 seasons, Battle of the Bastards, The Winds of Winter. But for me, there has been, and there always has been, one episode that, to me, I think stands above all the rest, and that is Season 4, Episode 9, The Watchers on the Wall. Yes, this episode may not contain the most nuanced dialogue like Jaime Lannister's Kingslayer speech or Tyrion Lannister's outburst at the trial, but as a piece of fantasy action television, it is just phenomenal. Director Neil Marshall did such a fantastic job of balancing tone, character work, and action spectacle all in this one episode. There are so many brilliant moments packed into this hour-long episode, and it's so intricately paced. This episode does not feel like it's an hour long, it just flies by. It's so much fun. And so today, in anticipation and celebration of House of the Dragon releasing, we've got the unfinished Jon Snow cosplay on, just because I want to talk to you all about my favourite episode of Game of Thrones. I love this episode so much. The episode opens with Jon and Sam's conversation about Ygritte and what it was like for Jon to be with her, and it's just one of my favourite moments. I love the way Kit Harington and John Bradley perform this scene. There's this person, this whole other person. You're wrapped up in them, and they're wrapped up in you, and for a little while, you're more than just you. Oh, I don't know, I'm not a bleeding poet. No, you really... I love... Oh, it's so good.
Well, I don't know, I'm not a bleeding poet.
It really just shows the strength of their friendship and just highlights the fact that even in the face of what seems like imminent death, Jon and Sam can still find solace within one another. It's so good. Then there's the scene between Sam and Maester Aemon where they talk about love, and not only does Maester Aemon drop the "love is the death of duty" line again.
Love is the death of duty.
One of the best lines in the whole of A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones. But also the moment where Maester Aemon reminisces on his long-lost love was just such a beautiful and touching moment. Just Peter Vaughan is fantastic as this character, and he really just gave this role his everything. He was so good as Maester Aemon. And then that moment is followed by Sam swearing at Pip to open the gate to let Gilly in, and just everything between Sam and Gilly in this episode is just so emotionally satisfying and fulfilling. Granted, the show does play the relationship between Sam and Gilly in a more romantic light, because in the books, George R. R. Martin writes Sam and Gilly's relationship a bit more like it's a forbidden love in a way. In A Feast for Crows, when Sam and Gilly have sex, Sam pretty much reacts in a really horrified manner when he realizes what he's done. He's just like, oh my god, what have I done? No, I'm a man of the Night's Watch. I've broken my oath. What the hell? It's not a bad change. It's just a difference I find to be interesting, because on the one hand, in the books, Sam and Gilly are like a forbidden love, but in the show, they pretty much are just like, yeah, Sam and Gilly forever, whatever. And then it's followed by another one of my favorite moments. I mean, technically every moment in this episode is one of my favorites, but just the conversation between Jon Snow and Sir Alistair Thorne on top of the wall is just mwah. The conversation about leadership, the way the dialogue is written is just, oh, it's so good.
Do you know what leadership means, Lord Snow? It means that the person in charge gets second-guessed by every clever little twat with a mouth. But if he starts second-guessing himself, that's the end.
The character work here is just so well written. Despite their differences, Jon Snow and Sir Alistair Thorne have to put aside their hatred for one another to do their duty to defend the wall from the wildlings, and it's so well done. Does not mean fucking draw.
Does fucking all mean fucking drop?
No, sir!
You're planning to die here tonight?
No, sir!
That's very good to hear!
There are so many great lines in this episode. Those are giants riding mammoths down there. Do you think your cold rolled steel will stop them?
Those are giants riding mammoths down there! Do you think your cold rolled steel's gonna stop them?
And now, getting to the main man himself, Jon Snow. Jon motherfucking Snow is perfect in this episode. Kit Harington gives this episode his all, and it's just such an emotionally satisfying Jon Snow-centric episode. Kit Harington really just takes command of this episode. His stage presence is just excellent. There are just so many moments in this episode that I would class as the best Jon Snow moments. The moment where Jon tells Gren to hold the gate.
Take 5 men. Hold the inner gate. Hold the gate.
There's the moment where Jon tells Ed to take command on top of the wall. They try the mammoths again, drop fire on them. If the climbers get too high, drop the scythe on them. And then that moment is immediately followed by,
Come brothers now, fight with me!
Come, brothers, now fight with me! God, this is why I love Jon Snow. He's just the fucking best. He's so cool in this episode. Like, that line delivery is just mwah.
Come, brothers, now fight with me!
And then when he jumps out of the lift and does the combat roll and starts slicing down wildlings left and right, like, how can you watch that and not go, this is just so fucking cool? Plus, the fight he has against Styr is awesome. In fact, one of my favorite behind-the-scenes stories is when Benioff and Weiss sat down, they looked at the footage, and they were just like, Neil, we don't really like this weird speed effect you've put on Kit when he's fighting. And Neil Marshall was like, there is no effect. That's genuinely how fast Kit Harington is moving. And I love that story. It just shows how dedicated Kit Harington is when he's playing Jon Snow. How much he's dedicated to the stage combat, to the choreography. It's a really cool and fun story. And when it comes to the action in this episode, fun is the word I would describe it as, because watching this episode is just so much fun. The action is so much fun. In fact, I think this is the best battle episode of Game of Thrones. Yes, it does not look as good as, say, the Battle of the Bastards. The Battle of the Bastards is a visual masterpiece. It genuinely looks and feels so visceral, so gritty, so gnarly. Miguel Sapochnik's direction and Fabian Wagner's cinematography in that episode is absolutely stunning. The one take, the shot of Jon Snow emerging from the crowd, it's all phenomenal. And so I will concede that from a visual standpoint, the Battle of the Bastards is a superior episode. But from an overall emotional and satisfying storytelling perspective, The Watchers on the Wall just does it better for me. And look, just because I think the cinematography in the Battle of the Bastards is better than Watchers on the Wall, that doesn't mean I think that the cinematography in The Watchers on the Wall is bad. No. There are some shots in this that I absolutely adore. I adore the shot where Jon Snow walks to the edge and the camera just dollies out and there's that really powerful shot of him. And then, of course, there is the shot of Jon mourning over Ygritte's dead body in slow motion, the lighting, the orange and teal, the ice and fire of it all. It's just gorgeous. And not to mention the fact that the one take that they do in this episode is genuinely well choreographed and masterfully well done. It's just that from a visual perspective, I just prefer the way the Battle of the Bastards looks. And speaking of Ygritte's death is really heartbreaking in the show. It always has been. In the books, it's just as heartbreaking. And the fact that Kit Harington and Rose Leslie met on set and they started dating and they ended up getting married, just it's so beautiful in a way when you look at the relationship between Jon and Ygritte in Game of Thrones and how that sort of manifested in real life. Like, there's just that whole extra layer of Kit and Rose's real life romance mixed in with Jon and Ygritte's actual romance. And obviously, character-wise, this is Jon Snow losing his first love, the love of his life, in his arms. And it's all because of Ollie, who is a made-up character for the show, and again, it's just emotionally hard-hitting and satisfying. And whilst we're on the topic of death, I think the deaths of Pip and Gren are also really well handled. Pip's death is just a shocking thing to see, because him and Sam, they're, doing their thing in the battle, they're shooting crossbows, and then just out of nowhere, Ygritte shoots Pip in the neck, and he's dying in Sam's arms, and it's really sad and tender moment. Sam's just like, no, you're alright, you're alright. It's really good stuff. But I mean, let's face it, Gren just has the cooler moment where him and the men are in the tunnel, the giant is coming through the gate, and as the giant is coming towards them, they recite the Night's Watch vow. It's perfect. It's such a good segue into the big courtyard fight where Jon Snow emerges into the battle. An interesting thing, though, is that both Pip and Gren are actually alive in the books, which I think is interesting because killing them off in the show adds a bit more stakes to the Battle of Castle Black, and so I don't mind the fact that they killed them off, especially since in the books they are minor characters, and we obviously don't know if they come back into play in The Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring, because the old fraud hasn't finished the books yet. And speaking of the books, I actually think the show improves the Battle of Castle Black from the books, because in the books, the Battle of Castle Black technically takes place on two separate nights. One night, it's Ygritte and her band of wildlings that attack Castle Black, and on the other, it's the stuff on top of the wall where the wildlings are, riding the mammoths and all that, and Jon Snow's taking command on top of the wall. And it's not to say that I don't like the battles in the book, it's just that I prefer the way it's done in the show because Jon Snow is just more active. In the book, Jon Snow is injured, and so he's kind of hobbling around half the time. He's not really using Longclaw in the action sequences. He's kind of just firing arrows most of the time. Whereas in the show, because they injured Jon Snow at the end of season 3 and they spent most of season 4 having Jon Snow recuperate, so the show actually allowed Jon Snow to recover from his wounds, and so when the Battle of Castle Black comes around, he's more active and more in control. And it's just these little changes that David Benioff and D.B. Weiss made when they were adapting A Storm of Swords into seasons 3 and seasons 4. It just made me go that once upon a time, when they actually cared about the Game of Thrones show, they could actually make changes that made sense and worked within the narrative of A Song of Ice and Fire, but also for the sake of the storytelling of the show. It just showed that there was a time where they did care about this show, where they weren't bored of making it and wanted to rush off to go and make a Star Wars project that they never ended up making. That at the end of the day, when they cared about this show, they could actually make story choices that actually worked and served the narrative. And so when I read A Storm of Swords, I was shocked to find out that the Crassus Keep subplot was not in it. And it shocked me because I thought this was something that George R. R. Martin would have written, because it just seemed so thematically resonant. The idea that Jon Snow wanted to get revenge on the mutineers that killed his Lord Commander. It just seems so fitting and something that would be in the books, but no, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss made it up. And it's a subplot that just works beautifully within the show, because not only is it entertaining to see Jon Snow versus Carl Tanner of fucking Gin Alley, but also, it's just a really good thematic story point of Jon Snow trying to get revenge and honor his Lord Commander Mormont. And another change I think they made for the better was ending the episode with Jon Snow going beyond the wall to surrender to Mance to try and kill him. Because in the books, Jon Snow is forced to do this by Alistair Thorne. Because in the books, Jon Snow takes command on top of the wall, they fend off the wildlings for a while, he goes to bed and he wakes up and he's basically being taken and put on trial by Alistair Thorne, Janos Slynt, and a couple of other members of the Night's Watch. The trial at the beginning of Game of Thrones Season 4 is actually the trial that happens at the end of A Storm of Swords, where Jon Snow is being forced by Sir Alistair Thorne to go beyond the wall to kill Mance Rayder, because if Jon Snow is killed by the wildlings, Alistair Thorne wins because he gets rid of Jon Snow, but if Jon Snow is successful and kills Mance Rayder, it's a win-win there, they kill the wildling leader. But I overall prefer the show version just because it makes Jon Snow look a bit more proactive and self-sacrificial and more heroic. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate the book version, in fact I really like the book version, I just prefer the show version because it makes Jon Snow look better. But to wrap things up, The Watchers on the Wall to me is the best episode of Game of Thrones. It's the most entertaining, it's the most fun, it's the most thrilling, the action is just top notch. Kit Harington takes front and center stage and he's absolutely phenomenal. This episode to me just cements the fact that Jon Snow was my favorite character in the show. He's my favorite character in the books just because this is the episode where he basically proves he is a worthy enough leader. This is the beginnings of him becoming Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. And just overall, the way Neil Marshall directs this episode is so fun, so thrilling, it's so well paced. The cinematography, the action, the music, it's all brilliant. In fact, popular Game of Thrones YouTuber Glidus actually thinks this is the best episode too, and Glidus is a man of good taste, so hey, at least we have that in common. I mean, are there episodes of Game of Thrones with better cinematography, better editing, better dialogue? Yeah, sure. But to me, as an overall experience, an overall television experience, this episode is just so fun and enjoyable. It's always been my favorite episode. Ever since I first watched this show, I was like, this is the best episode. It's so much fun. It's so cool. Jon Snow is just the best, and just this is my favorite episode. But my question to you is, do you agree with me? Do you think The Watchers on the Wall is the best episode of Game of Thrones? If not, let me know what your favorite episode is down in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, follow me on social media, all that good stuff. And until we meet again, see you guys next time.